Hi folks, it's Kelvin here. We run coach for Leeds and surrounding areas as well as online coaching. In this little video I'm going to talk about using poles. So for a lot of longer distance races like ultras, particularly those with a lot of elevation, poles are really useful. So let's crack on. So the first thing I'm going to mention is the sort of grip. So when we're sort of holding the poles, we're either not using the strap, so we're just kind of holding the poles wherever. That can maybe just give the sort of hand a break from being in the strap, but when we're using the strap it's really important that we go up through the strap and then we take hold of the strap as well, because when we're pressing down on the pole we don't actually use our grip. The hand is very relaxed, which allows the pole to be behind us without sort of changing our posture. So let's look at a few techniques. When the terrain's not too difficult, I use the pole with every foot strike, so every step I push with the pole, and I use this on a terrain where I know that the tip of the pole is going to grip, and that looks something like this. I'd also do that when I've got quite a bit of energy, because that can be quite tiring. Most of the time, particularly when it's a little bit steeper like this, I'll use the pole maybe with every other step, where I'm going to put the pole a little bit further sort of in front of me so I can sort of see where it's going, whether it's on something that's slippy or grippy, so I can make sure that the pole's got a good purchase. But I'm going to wait until the pole's past me, till the tip is past me, before I actually push on it, and that looks something like this. So that's maybe more appropriate to this terrain. It's maybe a little bit steeper than it looks on the video. And the other thing is what I call the Courtney de Walter, which is the double poling, slightly offset, and it's more similar to the last technique that I demonstrated, where you can actually see where the poles are going, slightly offset, so one slightly in front of the other, and then as we move past the poles we push on one and then the other, and going up something a bit steeper that'll look something like this. The other thing we can do when things get really steep, so the poles are used for mainly for propulsion, but also to keep us a little bit more stable, so every time we push on the foot it's propelling us in the right direction. But on really steep stuff we tend to use them more for stability than propulsion. So what I tend to do is I slip my hands out of the straps, shorten my grip on the pole, and I'm just going to kind of put them anywhere as I sort of work my way up things. And again, this is more of a stability aid, because obviously the poles are in front of me now, so if I was to push on those they're actually pushing me backwards. So that's quite nice when you're just picking through something that's a little bit more technical. When I'm running, between using the poles for relatively short distances, I'll either hold just sort of the middle of the pole and hold one in either hand, or I might hold them in sort of both hands. It might be that if I'm in a sort of a race that's quite busy, I might actually hold the tips in front of me, so that I can see where they are. The other thing that we can do when we're not using them is we can actually break them down and just hold the pole short like that in your hands. So I hope that makes some sort of sense. It is something that requires practice, so if you've decided to use poles on an event, it's something that you want to get out there and practice. We do use a little bit more energy because we're using the upper body, so maybe an extra sort of like 10 or 20 grams of carbohydrate an hour, sort of factored in for those sections where you're going to be using the poles, because you're not going to be using them all the time. Generally I don't recommend them for descending. It tends to put people in a poor posture for running, unless it's got really steep and gnarly, where you really just want a little bit of extra stability. But in all honesty, in that situation I still wouldn't use poles personally. I like to have my hands just to sort of pop on a rock while I jump down off something. So I hope that makes some sort of sense. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the comments below. And for now, happy running.